I have to sit in this.
Yeah, you sit down.
She only can move.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Northampton County Council meeting of March 2nd, 2017 to order. If we could rise for a moment of silent prayer. Thank you, and please stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Zembo, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bennell?
Here.
Mr. Kuzic?
Present.
Mr. Deep?
Here.
Mrs. Ferrara? Here. Mr. Geisinger?
Present.
Mr. Kraft? Mr. Phillips?
Present.
Mr. Vaughn?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
All present except Mr. Kraft and Mr. Dees is by phone.
Okay. Then we will move on. The next item is the approval of the minutes of the February 16th, 2017 meeting. Moved by Mr. Werner to approve by acclamation. Do we have a second? Seconded by Mr. Bennell. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Passes by a vote of 8-0. Next up is courtesy of the floor. We did not have anyone that had signed up, but is there anyone that would like to address council this evening? Okay. Then there being none, next item would be the controller's report. Is Mr. Barron here this evening? Okay, he is not. Then we will move into the county executive's report. Mr. Brown?
Nothing this evening.
Nothing this evening. You said it all this morning, I heard. Next is old business. We had nothing this evening under old business. Is there any old business that any member of council would like to bring up at this time? Okay. There being none, then we will move into new business. First item is the consideration of the codification resolution for the period ending December 31st, 2016. The Northampton County Home Rule Charter, Section 606C, requires that the County Council by resolution adopt a codification of all ordinances as amended, having the force and effect of law and of the Charter as amended. The codification is an annual housekeeping matter that arranges the ordinances in an index format. And I'll just introduce that resolution. So now, therefore, be it resolved by the Northampton County Council that the attached codification for the period ending December 31st, 2016 shall be adopted this second day of March 2017. And again, this is just something that we're required by the Charter to do each year. Any questions or comments from council? There being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call for the vote?
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Dees?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
And Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Okay. Then the next item under new business is consideration of the Stepping Up Initiative Call to Action Resolution. I believe Mr. Dietz was going to introduce this. Is there someone?
Yes.
Matt, do you have it? Would you like to introduce it, or would we have?
Yeah, I do have it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so obviously something we picked up over at CCAP this past fall was about dealing with the mental illness in the prison system. And so there's a resolution that went out through the state about addressing that. And I'll read it into here, which is, now therefore let it be resolved that Northampton County Council does hereby request that the county executive sign on to the call to action to reduce the number of people with mental illness in our county jail, commit to sharing lessons learned with other counties of Pennsylvania and across the country to support a national initiative and encourage all county officials, employees, and residents to participate in stepping up.
Okay, so again, is there any more?
Yeah, well, just in that, talking about with other counties, Erie County has implemented this last year, and seems to us one of the cities that I get out to quite a bit for work. I've actually been speaking with the administration out there, and my next trip out there, I'll be sitting down with them and kind of go over some different things that they have done to see what might work or maybe things that we can do in our county.
All right. Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, I'd ask our Dan Keene if he supports this, and he does, and I'm kind of aware of it. I just want to state the obvious, that this is like I'll just say it irks me, is that in the last 20 years, the state has reduced the facilities for criminally and civilly committed psychiatric patients by 70%. And now the state is saying, wow, I wonder why there's so many psychiatric patients in our county prisons. Where did they think they're going to go? There was an article in the paper about a young man up in Bangor who his dad didn't want to do it, but he had him arrested for breaking into the house. And he did that so that the boy could get, he was 24 years old, but severe psychiatric problems, could get the help that he needed. And Judge Giordano deemed him incompetent. And he had to stay in our county jail 18 months before an opening in a state psychiatric hospital. So this is all good, and it sounds good, study this, study that. But, I mean, there's a lot of people getting rich, PhDs, studying the problem. I think the problem is that they emptied out the state hospitals. Allentown State Hospital. They emptied them out. They put them in the general population. There's no facilities for them, so they go into the prison. I'm going to vote for this. But, I mean, I just had to get that off my chest, is that I know what the problem is. I don't know what 100% of the problem is, but I know what a big percentage of the problem is.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree. We recognize that it was the state closing of the hospitals that put the burden on. And of course, unless that's going to change, I guess we've got to kind of come together, figure out some solutions on how to help it.
Oh, and I know.
Mrs. Farrar?
And I know they said they were going to have group homes and all this other, put them back into the community and so forth. But it's not reality. And another question I'd like to know, too, as long as we're talking psychiatric, I would like to know Lehigh Valley Hospital and St. Luke's, who are our two biggest providers in Northampton, Lehigh County, and Lehigh Valley. I'd like to know how many psychiatric beds that they have. How many psychiatric floors, how many psychiatric beds do they have? And I have a feeling it could be very few. Because I just had someone who needed help and had to go all the way to Palmerton.
I can kind of answer that.
Mr. Vaughn?
Well, I mean, it's off the record here. I mean, it's not. It's not really.
We're on the record.
This is on the record.
I mean, I didn't mean it. Oh well. I'm fired up about this right now.
Well, thank you.
because-
Join the club. So am I.
Oh. Can you answer?
I don't
me?
know the exact number.
It has nothing to do with this resolution, and yet maybe it does.
Working in the ER, I see psychiatric patients come through constantly. And the problem is that there's just not enough facilities to get them into. And they typically are in a hold status for even several days waiting to get to facilities because these facilities are primarily filled to the max.
But why doesn't St. Luke's have a floor?
They do.
or two?
They do. It's a
How many beds?
older adult health, but
Okay.
you know, not everybody's an older adult who needs psychiatric, care. So there's specialized, kids pieces for children, and
Okay.
most of the beds are filled. to be
It's
honest.
just something that I think
And-
this
and
whole
to Hayden's
business
point,
with
he's
the
right,
prison is,
you cut off so many health
I'm with
services.
Aiden on this
Yeah,
one.
you can't decrease the facilities by 70% and then wonder why the counties are suffering. The counties are bearing it.
Yeah, I would just say this is a state and a national initiative, so I as well intend to support it. And I
Absolutely.
think the other thing that's worth noting is at last month's Human Services meeting, we had found out that we are winding up with some of these patients at Graysdale. So there's another place where the burden of the closing of those facilities has reared its head. So yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. Just because you close the state facilities doesn't mean that the problem goes away. It rears itself elsewhere, and that's what we've seen. Mr.
And-
Phillips?
And just recently, the governor, who is really trying to cut as much as he can, because I understand that I totally get the fiscal pressure, but he just is planning to reduce another mental facility, and it was between Waymart or Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh got the axe. So it's going to get worse.
Any other comments on the stepping up resolution? There being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mr. Dietz.
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Bennell.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Passes unanimously. Then the next item under new business is consideration of a resolution authorizing the application for multi-municipal grant funds for the Nazareth Area 2030 Multi-Municipal Comprehensive Plan. And at this time, I'll call on Mrs. Ferraro to introduce the resolution.
These monies have been approved through the budget, but, this was also discussed at our Economic Development Committee meeting earlier this evening. So I will just read a little bit here. Be it further resolved that the Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development is authorized to provide a minimum of $56,250 and a maximum of $62,500 match requirement for the multi-municipal planning allocation that was approved for NCD-CED by County Council in the 2017 adopted budget for the update of the Nazareth Area 2013 Multiple Municipal Comprehensive Plan, and further approves the NCD-CED to commit the appropriate resources, also approved by County Council in the 2017 approved adopted budget to complete the required local work for the plan.
Okay. And again, this came up at the Economic Development Committee meeting early this evening. I see Mr. Hurlinger is still here. Are there any discussion items, questions, or comments from council regarding the Nazareth Comprehensive Plan? No? And there being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mrs. Ferraro.
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mr. Warner.
Yes.
Mr. Bennell.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Dietz.
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Passes by a vote of 8-0. Then the next item under new business is the consideration of a resolution authorizing the application for multi-municipal grant funds for the Slate Belt Multi-Municipal Comprehensive Plan. And again, I'll call on Mrs. Ferraro to introduce the
Okay, and rather than
resolution.
read all that again, the wording is exactly the same. It's $62,500 in required match funding, and for the update of the Slate Belt Municipal Comprehensive Plan, and approves for our own Economic Development Committee, our department, to commit appropriate resources, also approved by County Council, again, in the 2017 adopted budget to complete the work for the plan.
Mr. Vaughn, you had a question or discussion?
Yeah, I didn't have the opportunity to ask Mr. Hurlinger during the Economic Development Committee meeting, but I'm going to vote for this, but I just would hope that you keep us abreast as to progress on this and where it's at.
We're absolutely excited about the fact that this collaboration is going on in two of the COGs, and it's very difficult to get that many municipalities to agree on something, and the fact that they've come together and done it and are really enthusiastic about it is very, very encouraging, and we will keep you very well informed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion items from council? There being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mrs. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
And Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Passes by a vote of 8-0. The next item under new business is the consideration of a resolution approving the submittal of an application for funding to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Office of Lead Hazard Control and Healthy Homes. And I'll call on Mrs. Ferraro to introduce that resolution.
Yeah, and this is a HUD grant that we're looking to get. That's $2,500,000 for lead abatement. That the county executive hereby resolved, the county executive, the county of Northampton is hereby authorized to execute and file an application to the lead-based paint hazard control for $2,500,000 and to accept the funding. That the county executive, the county of Northampton is hereby authorized to provide such assurances and or certifications as required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and also any additional or revised data which may be requested during the review of the said application. So I think this is very exciting for our Economic Development Department.
So again, this was discussed earlier this evening at the Economic Development Committee. Is there any further questions or discussion regarding this issue? Okay. There being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mrs. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
And Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Okay, passes unanimously. Then the next item under new business is consideration of a resolution authorizing the County of Northampton's participation in a regional assessment of the fair housing as mandated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development through the County Department of Community and Economic Development in collaboration with local municipal partners and housing authorities. And again, I'll have Mrs. Ferraro introduce that
Okay,
resolution.
now therefore it is hereby resolved by the Northampton County Council that the County of Northampton, DCED, is hereby authorized to undertake the assessment of fair housing as mandated by HUD. We've had a busy Economic Development Committee meeting.
And I believe this is a funded mandate. So we like those.
We can live with this one.
Any further discussion regarding this issue? Okay, there being none, Ms. Zembo, can we call the vote?
Mrs. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
And Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Okay, passes by a vote of 8-0. Then the next item we have under new business is the consideration of a resolution approving the implementation of eminent domain procedures for easements relating to construction and repair of County Bridge number 213. And at this time, I'll ask Mr. Phillips to introduce the resolution.
We have it.
Just trying to cash this out to see how far what I have to read. It is quite kind of complicated. Let me just go through it. Northampton County is ready to undertake reconstruction repair efforts relative to County Bridge 213 located on Railstown Road, Plainfield Township. In order to do so, Northampton County requires certain easements, both temporary and permanent, to accomplish the necessary scope of work on said bridge. Whereas, consistent with the scope of the work, Plainfield Township requires a permanent drainage easement to allow for proper runoff and drainage from said bridge. And whereas Northampton County and Plainfield Township has been unsuccessful in negotiating easement agreement with the record owner of one of the affected properties, and whereas in order to provide for the acquisition of the above referenced easement and to assure the proper performance of scope of work or the relative to said bridge, Northampton County and Plainfield Township must utilize the power of eminent domain to condemn the necessary portions of the affected property, the metas and bounds of which are further defined by plans prepared by Northampton County engineering firm for the project, Borton Lawson. And whereas Northampton County retains Arrowland Solutions, LLC, to establish an estimate for compensation of the affected landowner for both Northampton County and Plainfield Township easements combined, and just compensation was estimated to be $300. Now, therefore, it is resolved by Northampton County Council that the County of Northampton, by and through its solicitor's office, shall file a declaration of taking and take such other steps as legally necessary and prudent to pursue the condemnation of these portions of the affected property, more specifically identified as Northampton County Tax Parcel ID, so forth, for the public purpose of the reconstructing, building, and otherwise maintaining the County Bridge 213. Northampton County shall be permitted to acquire a temporary construction easement and permanent maintenance easement upon the affected property, and if necessary, to acquire on behalf of Plainfield Township a permanent drainage easement interest upon said property consistent with the plans and designs of Northampton County's engineering firm, Borton Lawson. If the county obtains the permanent drainage easement on behalf of Plainfield Township, it shall therefore be permitted to fully transfer and assign all interest under said easement to Plainfield Township without additional consideration. Northampton County may make an offer of just compensation in the record amount of $300, and there's also attached a resolution from Plainfield Township. So to summarize this is the famous Turtle Bridge. We had quite a problem getting access to the bridge. There's I think 3 or 4 landowners involved. One landowner wouldn't allow us. And what we're really talking about is 90 square foot swath of creek bank along the Little Bushkill. So 90 square feet. Maintenance right. He still maintains title to it. All we have is the right to go in and maintain that land to keep the water flowing, through the bridge, and also if we need to get on that land to work on the bridge. And the Plainfield Township is a drainage right. It goes from a drain sewer upstream, up road from it, and it goes underground and empties into the creek. I hate eminent domain. I mean, I just absolutely cannot stand it. And even me, who don't like eminent domain, I'm looking at this. This is really a inconsequential, non-abruptive, use of this land. Stanley, do you want to come up and say anything about this?
Good evening. I'm just following Hayden's lead on this. It's 90 square feet. The adjacent property owners gave us right with the first letter to them. This landowner has caused problems not only for us, but also for the township. We have seen some real interesting things happening there. When I was on site, their Plainfield Township manager told me not to go and talk to the gentleman unless I had 2 squad cars with me. Man's relatively volatile. So with that being said, the landowner then called at 2 o'clock in the morning, the Plainfield Township manager, and said, do whatever you want, but I'm not signing a document. The funny thing is, this little patch of land, 90 square feet, is about 400 feet from his home, and he just doesn't care. And otherwise, this bridge would have been completed this past season. Now he's pushed us into this construction year. Thankfully, we haven't really incurred any additional cost other than this legal action, and now paying him $300. The landowners that were adjacent didn't cost us a dime. So.
Mr. President, I think I may have been out of order asking him to come because we didn't have a second on this. Don't we have to have a second before it's discussed?
Well, that was something that I was going to raise at this point. This is a resolution.
It is.
Any member of council can introduce a resolution.
And I'm introducing it.
Right, and I believe that there is some question as to whether or not this would require an ordinance, and I'm going to ask our solicitor if he could address that.
Yeah, I think it does require an ordinance. Pardon me. The Home Rule Charter provides that ordinances are required for a whole host of things, one of which is any purchase, conveyance, lease, or any of those types of transactions involving real property in the county. And this is, if you will, a conveyance from that individual to the county, not voluntarily, but you are essentially seeking to take an interest in someone's property, even though it's brief and small. So I think you need an ordinance, and I would respectfully suggest that instead of acting on this resolution, that perhaps it be modified tonight to have exactly the same provisions in it, but make it an ordinance to be published and acted on at the next meeting.
Okay. I guess the question is, to our solicitor, can we just replace the words resolution with ordinance, and
Sure.
therefore it is hereby resolved with it is hereby ordained?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you could just review this, and then
Sure.
at the bottom where it says resolution, it would be ordinance?
Yeah.
Do you see any other places where this would need to be amended?
Before we,
I
Mr.
don't.
President, before we close that, I have a question for the solicitor on the document it is, which would, it's on this, but since we're talking about possibly reworking it, I have a question on this.
Okay.
And in answer, Mr. President, to your question, no, I think you can change those items, and this would then be the introduction of an ordinance tonight for consideration at the next meeting.
Okay. Did you have a
Mr.
question
Ryan,
for the
can I-
county
can you,
solicitor?
take the podium. In a resolution, in the, now therefore, on the third clause, it says, if the county obtains permanent drainage easement on behalf of the Plainfield Township, it shall therefore be permitted to fully transfer and assign all interest under said easement to Plainfield Township without additional consideration. Is Plainfield obligated to take that from us? In other words, is there any way in this that we'll be stuck with that drainage ditch, the drainage pipe, actually?
Well, the way I read this, I mean, the literal language just says that it's permitted
Yeah.
that Plainfield can take it without additional consideration. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm concerned that Plainfield might say, you know, we're not going to take it, it's your problem.
well, let me read the rest of it and see if there's language that actually binds them to that. Give me a sec here.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked at their resolution, and I didn't see anything that said that we will take it. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I did read it.
If I may, working with Dave Backenstow, and who is Plainfield Township's solicitor, they were also having issues with this landowner as well. So it's just an agreement between Dan O'Donnell, Ryan, and then into Plainfield Township, because it is Plainfield Township's obligation to take care of the storms.
Yeah. But that still doesn't give me comfort on my question from a legal perspective. I know that that's the handshake, but do you see what I'm saying, Brian?
Yeah, I
Brian?
do see what you're saying. And so you're looking for language that says Plainfield shall.
Is anybody else concerned about that? I mean, what if they back away?
Well, I guess I would say, let me look at their resolution to see if their
Yeah,
resolution.
I did, but you look at it again.
Mr. Bentley, you had a comment? while
I'm
they're
just trying to
looking?
get clarification. Is we're looking, the county is looking to take this person's property.
We're looking to take the developmental, the maintenance rights for 90 square feet
I understand
of
it, but
riverbank.
it's still an issue of, and this is where I'll go back to the original concept of the Tea Parties, is that we're sitting here
as a government entity, and if I'm reading number 3 correctly, that Mr. Phillips just referenced, is that the county is going to take this property through eminent domain. And I don't really, no offense, I don't really care how big the property is, but we're looking to take somebody's property through eminent domain as the county, and we're going to hand it over to the township. So now we're confiscating property and giving it to another entity. Then I'm misreading number 3 because that's the way it looks. If the county
Mr. Rugis, could you come back up to the mic so we can...
There is actually language here. I see in number 4 on the last page of the...
On the Plainfield?
resolution.
Yeah.
It says that the township acting by its solicitor is hereby authorized and directed to pay or offer to pay within 60 days from the filing of the herein above mentioned declaration of taking just compensation of the condemnees as provided in Section 307 of the eminent domain code. That would suggest to me that they would be taking title to it.
Yeah.
I can appreciate your argument because it's not the most artfully drafted thing ever, but it does, it would, that would, I think, could be reasonably read to say that they're expected to take title to that. Because it says here, authorized and directed to pay or offer to pay. So this language is clearly saying you're either paying for it or you're offering to pay for it. So if you offer to pay for it, I guess somebody could reject that offer, but that is directing them to make payment for something, and the only thing that you could make payment for would be the land interest. So I guess you'd say in legal terms there's a little bit of wiggle room there, but that is buttoned
We're
up.
comfortable with it.
I would be.
Okay. Then I am.
Yeah, and I agree.
Okay. Then I'm.
I mean, I think that resolution by Plainfield Township, and I have a question as to whether the resolution is appropriate there, but the point is they have specifically directed, authorized and directed the solicitor to pay for the whatever the just compensation is. Just compensation for an easement is whatever either is agreed or a court determines to be the correct payment. So I don't really think the county's on the hook for anything here.
Can I address Matt's issue again? Because I stumbled upon this big time in regards to eminent domain, because I do not like eminent domain. But so let's just take both segments of this. One is the underground drain pipe, which is like 31 feet or something like that. It's not it's and it's underground. So it goes from the sewer underground into the creek. So that's what you're talking about. That the Plainfield Township wants to have. They don't want that property. They want to be able to maintain that stormwater sewage. I'm okay with that, to be honest with you. Then on the creek bank, abutting the creek on the north side, we have to have access to that to build a bridge, and we also have to have access to that because we're always cleaning that debris so we don't get floods at the bridge. And what we're saying is that man can have that property. He could do anything that's his property, but we just want to have the right to maintain that property in the future to stop the flooding that may happen on that bridge. And it's 9 by 10 foot. I mean, it's so inconsequential piece of property that $300 seems like inadequate compensation. So I'm big on that. You know, the one thing that you know me, Matt, I do not like eminent domain, but I could sleep at night with this. This is not the eminent domain case that I really am going to lose sleep over.
And I think, if I may, I don't mean to
Certainly.
interrupt, but
No, you should interrupt if we're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
Well,
please.
I mean, I think one of the problems is that we're getting into having the discussion about something which is
Yeah.
an ordinance, which is supposed to occur after it's been
It's
advertised.
introduced. Okay, thank you. All right, so I think the first thing we need then to do is a motion to amend this, and then we'll have two people that will have to introduce it as an ordinance. So I will make the motion then to amend the title of this from resolution to ordinance on the first page, and then on the second page to delete the word resolved and replace that with ordained. And then at the very bottom of the page, delete resolution and replace that with ordinance.
I'll
All right, so we have a second on the amendment. Can we vote on amending this from a resolution to an ordinance?
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
And Mr. Bennell?
No.
Passes by a vote of 7 to 1.
Okay, so it passes by a vote of 7 to 1. Now we will need two sponsors to introduce this as an ordinance. Mr. Phillips and Mr. Geisinger will be introducing this ordinance. The public hearing, debate, and potential vote would be at our meeting 2 weeks from today, which would be March the 16th. All right. Now, on a much lighter note, the next item under new business is consideration of a resolution accepting a donation of flowers for Graysdale residents. And I'll ask Mr. Vaughn to introduce this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I feel like I've been reading a lot of these donation resolutions. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Northampton County Council that it does hereby accept a donation from Sam's Club of 98 dozen roses for the residents at Graysdale with an estimated retail value of $1,893.20.
Any discussion on the donation?
What was the occasion? Just curiosity. I'm going to vote for it, but you know what the...
Valentine's Day.
Should have guessed that.
Okay, let's call for the vote then.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferraro?
Yes.
Mr. Geisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
And Mr. Warner? Yes. Passes by a vote of 8 to 0.
Okay, passes by a vote of 8 to 0. That was all we had under new business this evening. Is there any additional new business that any member of council would like to raise at this time? Okay, there being none, we will move then into council committee reports. Mrs. Ferraro?
Well, the Economic Development Committee met this evening, and we passed several resolutions this evening that were part of that original agenda. But we also heard from Mike Golsterchik and Discover Lehigh Valley, and the valley is doing very well, growing. I don't even know the word. What I'm thinking of, but the visitors are growing. The attendance and more money's coming in. And then a very interesting update by Amy Hollander, the president and CEO of the National Museum of Industrial History. And I hope we all get to go there one day. I've been there, and it's fascinating. And now they're having this special projects one Saturday, the third Saturday of each month, and this month it's on drones.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting. Thank you.
Are there any additional committee reports this evening?
Stuttering.
Mr.
Yeah,
Phillips?
Donna.
First Mr. Phillips, then Mr. Dietz.
Yeah, for the capital projects, we had a pre-bid conference and a site visit on the generators, the emergency generators for Graysdale. So I was up there for that, and it was good news. I mean, we had 9 electrical contractors and maybe, I didn't get the count of I think maybe, let's say 5 general contractors. So I'm always excited when you go to these pre-bid meetings when there's a lot of people, because then you have a better chance of getting a couple competitive bids. So that was good news. And, Bob always asks me when they're going to get in. And we'll have it once, the May 23rd is going to be the opening. So once we have the opening and a response to the bids, then we'll have a better idea.
Okay. Mr. Dietz, you had a committee report?
Yeah, at our last open space meeting, we had the wildland preservation presentation, and I forgot to open it up to council last week that they offered a spot on their committee. They had someone from Lehigh County, and they offered it to someone from Northampton County Council to sit on there. So I don't know if anyone else on council had an interest in it, in sitting in that spot, or I would if not, but I wanted to open up to anyone else.
Is there any interest from any member of council for the Wildlands Board? Well, you know what that means, Mr. Dietz.
All right.
Congratulations, you're the Northampton County Council liaison to the Wildlands Conservancy Board.
All right. Thank you.
Are there any other committee reports this evening? Okay, council liaison reports? Mr. Phillips?
I went to two Lehigh Valley Planning Commission meetings, the main meeting, and I also went to the transportation subcommittee meeting. And as I referred to, and I won't go into the detail, but when our economic development team was talking about things that were going on, you know, my participation in the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission really helps me put this all together, and it's there's a lot of synergy that's going on, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, I served on that board for several years, and you do learn a lot.
You do.
When you're there. Any other liaison reports this evening? Council clerk?
Nothing.
Nothing this evening. Solicitor, Mr. Lauer, you had a report of anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Phillips, you had a question?
A saved item. It's not a question, but I just want to talk about something and wrap it up, but I do want it in the minutes. I had a voter send me an email asking about is a possibility to use prison inmate labor to do litter cleanup along the highways. And I sent that over to Mr. Keene, and he gave me a good response. I'm not going to read it back, but it was thorough. And basically, it'd be additional office. It's not cost effective. I'll just sum it up. By the time you get the insurance, the additional vehicles, the additional officers, you'd have to pay them. The prime candidates, which this is really plus for us, I think. The prime candidates that would be most eligible for this type of work are probably on work release anyway. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why I'm going to craft an email to the voter and give him a synopsis of what Dan has told me. And basically, it's just not cost effective.
Anything else to come before council this evening? Okay. Then would we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Bennell, seconded by Mr. Phillips. Have a nice evening, everyone. I see we have some students in the audience. You're welcome to come forward and discuss county government and get our autographs if you need them for your class.
Hey, John?
Yeah.